Bruk av mobilteknologi I friluftslivsstudier. Imre van Kraalingen fra Norges Idrettshøgskole. Velkommen til deg.
Takk.
Jeg skal ikke bruke noe veldig mye tid, men jeg må innrømme at jeg googlet deg. Og så så jeg at du har et veldig allsidig friluftsliv med mange forskjellige aktiviteter. Det så jeg I hvert fall. Vær så god, ordet ditt.
Tusen takk. Hei alle sammen, god morgen. Jeg heter Imre, kommer fra Nederland. Jeg skal presentere på engelsk I dag, så bare si fra hvis jeg begynner å snakke alt for fort for dere. My PhD is about the role and impact of mobile technology in higher outdoor education in Norway, so friluftslivsstudier at the higher education level. The aim of my research project is actually twofold. On the one hand, I aim to explore how mobile technologies are harnessed into the planning and the enactment of outdoor education or higher outdoor education curricula. And secondly, it aims to gain a deeper understanding of the technological mediation that mobile technologies have and their impact on our experiences of nature. Today specifically, I will present a research article which is a systematized review on the use of mobile technology, use of mobile technology in outdoor learning programs internationally to gain an insight in what's going on in the field. So I'll just start with a brief contextualization and then try to focus mostly on the findings, which I think will be most interesting for you guys. So today's world is arguably marked by a continuous and rapid advancement of digital and mobile technologies, and they alter our perceptual experience and our general perceptions of temporal and spatial relations to the world and also the people around us. And this is generally associated with the character of modernity that gives shape to a world marked by increasing interconnection, proximity, and changeability. So especially the last 10 years, we've seen a virtual explosion of the use of mobile technologies in the outdoor domain, whether that's adventure recreation, outdoor education, friluftsliv in Norway. Mobile technologies have come to play an increasingly influential role in the field. Now, when we look at the education level, I think this development comes with an extra set of considerations when mobile technologies are used for pedagogical purposes or within a pedagogical setting or context. So when I started reading into the literature, one thing stood really out to me, and that's that the use of mobile technologies is very much a controversial topic in the field. Perhaps not only in Norway, also internationally. Either it seemed people are hesitant to acknowledge their use or talk about it, which places a barrier for us to better understand the impact these technologies have. And there's an Australian author called Payne, and he wrote that it becomes increasingly difficult for outdoor education programs to claim that they are alternative beyond the fact that they happen in an outdoor classroom. Now, my study is specifically focusing on mobile technologies, so not digital technologies more broadly. And the definition I work with is any electronic wireless handheld devices that can serve as a tool for cellular communication, the documentation of information, and that provides access to online resources. So this can be smartphones, iPads, perhaps even some smartwatches that are highly advanced nowadays. And I think mobile technologies are characterized by two obvious aspects, their mobility and their portability. So the fact that we, of course, can have them in our pockets, in the hand, we can carry them with us, we can use them to basically connect almost to anyone, almost at any time, almost in any place, and almost to any network. Now, of course, there's still a lot of places in the world where this doesn't apply to, but it's increasingly developing. So the concept of learning anytime, anywhere is very strongly connected with the use of mobile technology. And what initially sparked the interest for me in this theme, because I started my PhD right before COVID-19 kicked in, was that COVID-19 has really reinforced this shift that was already happening in terms of how teaching and learning transpire in the 21st century. And I think this comes with a lot of challenges for any education sector, but particularly for the outdoor education sector. So in the literature, when we talk about digital and mobile technologies more broadly, very often it's described as a double-edged sword. The concept is conceived by Cuthbertson et al. I think it's a pretty popular article when talking or writing about this topic, and it refers to the affordances that digital and mobile technologies carry with them. So the benefits and the pitfalls taken together. So whilst mobile technologies can enhance as well as distract outdoor learning activities, and that of course depends on how they are used. So whilst they can serve kind of this playful exploration of the outdoors, it also comes with a basic structure of a win and loss assessment. And especially in a pedagogical context, these matters are gaining critical significance. So educators are more and more faced with this decision-making around when, where, and how to use these mobile technologies. And I think this whole context gives only a minor insight into the layers of complexity that have been added to the field due to these advancements and developments. So the particular research paper today is, as I said, a systematized review. I selected 33 articles, and they are all peer-reviewed articles that started or that were written or published between 2010 and the present moment. I really wanted to focus on the past 10 years to capture kind of the most recent developments and their application. Outdoor learning programs international and the use of mobile technologies as pedagogical tools. So as I said, I won't go too much into the details, but I will focus on the findings, which are kind of two sets. The first one is pretty straightforward, the affordances of the use of mobile technologies and the considerations for implementation. I'll try to focus on the latter because I know that it's easy to run out of time here. Regarding the benefits, the reviewed articles had some pretty clear advantages of using mobile technologies. First and foremost, they found that a lot of the participants experienced an increased motivation and engagement in the learning activity, as well as an increased interest for learning about the place. And I think a lot of these benefits kind of are interconnected with each other. When we look at access to information, this can help to increase this interest in learning about place as well. The pictures show a pretty famous application which can be already considered outdated today, but it's still very much used. It's called geocaching. It's this treasure hunt application where participants go out with their GPS and find spots, and very often this is combined with interactive tasks and learning about local flora and fauna, for example. And then another one that's very prevalent in the outdoor field is the visual capture of experiences. So photographs, for example, have been used as not just as a research method when we talk about photo elicitation, but also as a pedagogical approach. That children go out, they have to make pictures of the theme of that teaching or learning activity, and they come back and reflect on the meaning of or what they've learned from what they've captured with their photo. Now, some other obvious benefits I would say are communication in terms of communicating with perhaps people outside the learning setting in case something dangerous may occur, but also keeping in touch with participants, depending, of course, on their age group. Then problem-solving skills, I think this has a little bit two sides on it. And on the one hand, the literature indicates that children develop these problem-solving skills with using the technology creatively. On the other hand, it can be argued as well that, I will get to that in the pitfalls, but that they might be less able to solve problems when they depend too much on technology. Collaborative learning activities were coming up multiple times in the articles, and the sharing of information and experiences online, but also within the classroom, came up a few times too. So even though it seemed like there's a lot of benefits to using mobile technologies, I think it's important to consider the pitfalls. As I said, there's a pretty strong pro-con discussion going on in the field. First and foremost, I think what's very important in the general outdoor domain, but of course in a pedagogical setting, is that the use of technology or the fact of having a technological device present with you can get people into situations that are far more challenging than their skill level can accommodate. And with a too high dependency on technology, when the skill level is not accurate to be in that situation and the technology fails, which I'm sure we've all had a phone dying from the cold or just running out of battery, water damage, and so forth, it can really lead to dangerous situations. So that's referred to as the technology-driven false safety. Now, this is connected to the concern that using technological devices in a learning activity can lead to a decrease of the development of skills of managing oneself without those technologies. I think another very interesting one is availability and cost. So questions are raised about, are participants expected to bring their own device? Or is the school going to provide it? What costs come with that? And how does this relate to broader issues of inequality and inequity in terms of participating in these activities? And I think these are very important practical questions that also need to be addressed. Then the complexity and technology, the complexity of technology and the skills required, not just the skill level of the students that need to be considered. Yes, these children grow up in a technologically structured world, but not everyone is equally comfortable with using a device for a learning purpose, but especially the skills of the educators. The technology is developing so rapidly that ideally educators should be having continuous training to stay up to date with the latest applications, the latest devices, and how they can be purposefully put to use. Which again comes with extra costs and it's time consuming. Perhaps one of the most important ones is the mismatch of the use versus the pedagogical objectives. As it is today, a lot of the literature describes a lot of positive and negative sides of the technology, but there's very little discussion of why that device or application was used in that moment for that particular pedagogical objective. And uncritical use of mobile technologies can lead to the device becoming a distractor from the experience and from the learning objective. What was mentioned, I think this was perhaps what I was most surprised about, concern my own thoughts going into the research, is that in everyday conversations, one of the things that came up most as a concern was the interference of technology with our direct and holistic experience of nature and the development of a connection to nature. In the literature, this was mentioned, definitely not as often as I would have assumed it would, but it was also not really discussed in depth. It was casually mentioned of literature says that it can interfere with our experience of nature and lead to a loss of experiential quality. But I want to just pay some extra attention to that, because even though these 33 articles didn't put so much focus on this, as I experienced it, it is a big concern in the field in general. And there's a quote, I think, that really illustrates this very well. And it writes, "But if I go into the wilderness with a GPS backup to ensure my rescue, if anything life-threatening should occur, have I not surrendered one of the most valuable aspects of going to the wilderness in the first place? Am I subtly less present, less alert to situations of danger, and thus less attuned to the intelligence those situations would solicit? will I become less able to deal with risks elsewhere in life? I think this really speaks to me in terms of when we talk in Friluftsliv about mastering, learning life skills, lifelong learning. I think this concern really, or this quote really illustrates that concern, and it's something that should be taken seriously. Now, what I did with the findings, aside from kind of getting an overview of these general benefits and pitfalls or the affordances, was to do a thematic analysis on what suggestions are given of how we can deal with this. And it came up with 3 main considerations: the mitigation, intentionality, and adaptation. First and foremost, mitigation starts with minimizing use in general, which seems very easy, but it is more complex than you would think. But secondly, also consider and evaluate the negative consequences. I think it's important that it's not just assumed, oh, you know, this sounds like a fun activity using this application, we'll try it, but that it's really considered and evaluated and reflected upon. And reflection and this evaluation comes back in all 3 of them, because I think it's important to maintain that through all stages of the decision-making process. The intentionality I already mentioned in terms of the mismatch between usage and the pedagogical objectives, that decisions are guided by principles and by practice. And I think that this doesn't count for only implementing or employing mobile technologies, but that any use and non-use of mobile technology should be critically reflected upon and critically considered and be based on well-informed decisions. Avoid making technology the focus point, so the technology should be in service of the learning objective. Consider and evaluate again the pitfalls and reflecting upon it. And then adaptation, where, when, and how technology can enhance outdoor learning. There's a lot of work to be done here. The suggestions that came up in the literature are very vague, and I can imagine, especially as practitioners, they're like, give me something to work with. So I hope along the research project I will be able to do more with that, and I also am collaborating with 2 PhD students who work in the same field and seeing if we actually can come up with concrete material for this. But in general, the suggestions are interactive, collaborative, and creative strategies, developing a technological competency of educators or facilitators of outdoor learning, and adapting to learner abilities and reflect and evaluate. I think 2 things are very important here, which is considering the stages of outdoor education. Where does an activity begin and where does it end? Do we only talk about being on the trip? And how about the planning stage and the post-reflection stage? One may not use a device on the trip, but one may use it to plan the trip. Secondly, I think it's important to realize that when we talk about including mobile technologies, it doesn't mean we do it all the time. It's about making well-informed decisions. That can mean one activity completely without and one with, and to have the students reflect on that and to convey our pedagogical intentions. Okay, concluding remarks. One very important thing is that the articles I reviewed had a very strong focus on children under the age of 14. And I think this definitely has influenced the findings, because children today, I think we can imagine that they really enjoy being outside with iPad, or and then sharing their experiences can lead to more positive findings. So that's good to keep in mind. And there's no consensus on how to manage mobile technologies, but I think we should move beyond that conversation of they're good or bad and gain a deeper insight in how they transform our quality and field and possibility range of our experiences. And I think we need to just make informed decisions, which is why I want to do this, or why I chose to do this research, is to help or to gain insight in not just the benefits and the pitfalls, but also this decision-making process. I guess I don't have time for this All right, I'm very sorry. Yes, the PowerPoint will be sent around. And takk for meg.
Veldig, veldig, veldig bra.